Hello, and welcome to today's After Church Tea Time. My name is Deanna, and today I am joined by Rachel and Valentina. Hi.
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 And today we will be discussing a beautiful sermon by Shaleia, How to Receive All the Gifts of God. So it is tea time. So before we jump into the discussion, what are you ladies drinking for tea time today?
Well, didn't know if I'd have time to go and make a cup of tea in between the sermon finishing and coming here, so I've just got water.
Okay, nice. How about you, Valentina?
Same, like when I'm asked this question, it's always just water. So yeah.
That's funny because I've got water too today. So it's the water time. It's the water crew today. That's quite all right. Awesome. So jumping into the discussion, how are you feeling today and what were some of your insights and takeaways?
Well, I always love Soraya's sermons. She's got this very gentle, easygoing style, but I think for me, towards the end of the sermon, just like the pace picked up a little bit. All of a sudden, there was so much really juicy stuff coming through. I was thinking, oh my God, how am I gonna remember all this? But slowing it down, like going back to earlier in the sermon, Soraya was talking about how important it is to complete the healing, like do all the steps of the mirror exercise all the way through. I think Alexandra said in another sermon that if you don't integrate, you're not grounding the healing in properly. I was pretty crap at doing the mirror exercise for quite a long time. It's like drifting off. That's a big trap. If your mind starts to wander, if you start to drift, you're drifting away from what you're supposed to be focusing on. And that can make it pretty useless. And it can be a while before you have enough discipline to stick with it right through to the end. And if it does take a while, it's okay. I mean, everybody has their own varying levels of resistance to it. But you will move through that if you keep persisting. Yes, right. I also talked about resistance to healing, resistance to what you've called in. Like there's quite a few people, and they're usually the ones that don't stay. They call everything in that they're desiring, but then they're not prepared to do the level of healing that requires. And it's even happened after harmonious union for a few people, and they drop out. So, yes, what Sarai was talking about, you ask God for the next step, and God gives you your next step, and it can feel overwhelming at times, I suppose, especially at the beginning. It's like, oh no, God, why have you given me all this? Yeah, you ask God for what you desire, and God gives you more building blocks for the thing that you're desiring, and you say, oh God, no, why did you give me more bricks? And you can either do it, you can move through it grudgingly, or you can do it joyously. And it's okay if you're having uncomfortable feelings. I mean, they always say all the way through, especially at the beginning, it's okay to feel your feelings. Your feelings can't hurt you. Some of these feelings can be uncomfortable, but once you've got used to it, you familiarize yourself with the healing cycles. You know when the next batch is going to come in. You know when you're going to be upheaving, and so you can plan your day around these cycles so that you move through everything in the most compassionate way. And even with the upheaval, some people, especially at the beginning of a journey, they find it very challenging to move through the upheaval, but a lot of that is also resistant. And there's a knack to releasing resistance or not having resistance to it. And that can take a while to master as well. And that's perfectly okay too. So wherever you're at on your journey, just know that you're doing just fine. If you're doing everything that you can do right now to the best of your ability, that's plenty. That's more than enough. So give yourself credit where credit's due.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And especially what you were saying about how that resistance can really, be a trap and kind of stop us from receiving what God has for us on the other side of our healing, right? And sometimes it can be, you can feel resistance to even doing the mirror exercise when you, like for me, I can tell when I'm kind of holding on to ego, when I don't really want to do the mirror exercise, when I know I have an upset, and then I'm like, I could mirror this, but, and then I'll be like, I could mirror this, but what if it changes my mind? Like I'm kind of stuck on what I think I want. And I'm like, well, if I do the mirror exercise, I could change my mind or something like that. So when I find myself in those kind of spaces, I'm like, oh, that's ego, because doing the mirror exercise is what brings me closer to God. It brings me my healing. And what that healing in God has for me is perfect, right? So I don't have to hold on to what I think I want or what I think is right. I can just kind of surrender, right, to what God wants for me, and move forward in the healing. But that resistance can be a tough nut to crack sometimes when you're stuck in ego. And so I really think it helps to, have that support, have an ascension coach, have people around you who are also doing the work and can kind of like keep you on this path so you're not falling for that trap.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. Yeah, like I remember when I first started healing and started doing the mirror exercise, it was like really difficult just to get through one mirror exercise and to go through the process of feeling my feelings and taking responsibility. But now it just gets easier and easier. And it's like the more that I choose just to heal, it's like I can just move through the mirror exercise very quickly and smoothly. Whereas, like you said, I have the same experiences when I'm like, not taking responsibility, and I'm just like trying to rationalize my upset, or maybe it's for this reason or that, and then it delays the healing process. Or like sometimes nowadays it happens to me at times where I don't realize it's an upset, and I'll just be like thinking, oh, this is normal, like whatever thing is going on, oh, this is normal, therefore I don't see it as an upset initially. Or it's not until I then feel into it and I'm like, hey, this is not the way things are in heaven, I need to heal this because this is not normal. So yeah, like moving through that resistance can like just speed up the process of moving through any upsets that arise, and that feels good because we're then in God's flow.
Yes, what was beautiful what you just said. Lots of juicy nuggets in there. Yeah, I think Shaleia was also talking about receiving the gifts that God has for you on the other side of the upset, and your twin flame as well. It's like you got to hear what they're showing you instead of leaving them hanging. So this is a very important piece, I think, for anybody listening who feels that their twin flame has left them hanging. If you don't heal what they're showing you by leaving you hanging, you're leaving them hanging as well. You got to receive the gifts and the lessons that they're bringing you. Because when you get triggered by your twin flame, that's always a gift. You're actually being loved when you're getting triggered. So if you want to avoid getting triggered, it's like saying that you want to avoid being loved. And each trigger, I think Jeff was saying in a class, it's like a little package from Amazon. And you have to unwrap it and take the contents out and put them in their appropriate place. Because if you're resisting doing that, if you're resisting the healing, then the twin flame is just going to point to the same package over and over again until you do unwrap it. And only then will you get the next one. So it's like what Valentina was talking about, delaying the healing process. Yet receiving the gifts and the lessons, learning the lessons, all that is just feeling your feelings about it and working through the feelings that arise about your situation, whatever it is. And the situation itself is irrelevant. Everybody's got a different story, but the story doesn't matter. Separation is separation, and it might look different for different people, but that's just a tool to go within. I mean, once you've gone within and identified those feelings and got to work on them, then the story doesn't have any relevance or significance anymore. So you can just let that go and bring love to all the places within that are asking for love, all the places that don't feel heavenly. It's like Valentina was saying, it's not like this in heaven. But it can feel normal if you're so used to having bad feelings about something. But it doesn't mean it is normal just because you've been experiencing it for a long time, or maybe that's all you can remember. No, you have to slow down, stop, and acknowledge that it's not okay to feel bad in any way. And by sitting with that feeling, validating it, acknowledging it, listening to what that part of you has to say, you're acknowledging that it is not okay to feel that way. We become numbed out to it. We become desensitized. We become dulled to it if it's been like a constant pain or like depression, because it's a pain we've learned to live with. But we don't have to live with it. We might be used to it, but once that's released, it's such a huge weight off your shoulders. And you feel like you're walking on air, floating. That's much more heavenly.
Yeah, that's so true, right? The numbing out, right? Because I feel like, especially like you said, if you've kind of been used to a certain pattern, right? Take like what comes to mind is if you've like grown up experiencing abuse of any kind, because this is something that I healed through like in my childhood, just the normal standard in society of like punishment and whoopings and spankings and stuff like that. If you've kind of grown up with that sort of abuse, it becomes normal. It feels normal, and it kind of feels like nothing is wrong, right? And you get numbed out to that pain and that upset. And this is something that I had to work through, where I had to acknowledge that abuse of any form is not okay, right? Even if I were taught that it was, right? Even if on the other side I received the proper lesson or the discipline that I was supposed to receive, right? The type of abuse or the abuse at all was not okay. And I was really numbed out to the fact that it was not okay. And but just kind of acknowledging there's a different way to receive discipline. There's a different way to get what it is that I'm after. And I don't have to be abused in order to reach that goal, I guess, you know? And so like when we're, it's like you said, when we're numbed out, we can be so stuck in the pattern, and it's not until we acknowledge that we are numb in this space and that we do feel upset, that's when we feel like the greatest sense of relief. Just that acknowledgement of, hey, I was numbed out here and it feels really bad. And just kind of saying that out loud and admitting it, I feel like that's such a huge part of the healing, because that part can be difficult for some as well. So yeah. And I really like the point you brought up about how the metaphor that Jeff uses with a package, and how you really have to unwrap the package and, you know, put everything in its place for each upset or your twin flame, or God is going to continue to point to this package until you deal with it. And what I also thought about when you were sharing that is like, for me, whenever I do receive an Amazon package, I unwrap it and take it out and everything. But what I have a bad habit of doing is like leaving the boxes in the house, or like storing the boxes just somewhere random in the house instead of actually throwing them out, right? Or recycling them and like finishing that last step. And I feel like that kind of relates to completing the healing, right? It's one thing to do steps 1 through 3, but if you're not integrating the healing, if you're not throwing away the package or recycling the package, so to speak, then you're not really finishing the process. And what I just kind of realized is that a lot of times I'll just leave the boxes in the kitchen or something, and they'll stack up. And now all these boxes, now that's a problem, right? So it's kind of the same with the steps of the mirror exercise. If you don't finish that last step, the upsets are still going to continue to pile up, and now you've got a brand new upset that you've got to deal with, or not even brand new, just one that has gotten more in your face because you didn't really finish the healing, right? You didn't do that integrating step. You didn't make that new choice at the end, right? So just a lot of insights from that piece.
Yeah, I really liked Rachel's example there as well. And something that's just come up for me, I'm just thinking, like, I bought some nice new clothes recently, some Indian dresses and some accessories to go with it. And so we had all the boxes and everything, the bags of the new things. And then me and Madam were like, okay, now let's unpack it together. Like, even though we already know what's in there, we didn't like just take it and put it away. We were like feeling like into each item and being grateful for it. And that just reminds me kind of like of the mirror exercise. Like maybe the first few steps seem like, wow, they're the gems, they're exciting and all that stuff. But then steps 3 through to 4 are really important in integrating and keeping that gem. And that's how I feel like now with these new like Indian traditions that I'm learning. Like when you get something new, you have a new item in your home or a gift, it's like you bless it and you welcome God and that item into your home. And I kind of feel that same way about the mirror exercise that we were all discussing, integration, step 3 and 4. Yeah, it feels good to integrate.
Yeah, the analogy of packaging and the mirror exercise. Well, it's always great fun to open a package that's arrived in the post. Got a lovely gift inside. What Deanna was saying about not throwing the boxes away, I was a little bit like that when I used to write out the mirror exercise. I wasn't writing it out probably nearly as much as I should have been, and certainly not nearly as much as I am these days. But I'd be writing it in my notebooks, which had other stuff that I wanted to keep in them, and I don't do that now. I've got a separate pad for the mirror exercise. It's always out. It's over there, and once I've filled up 2 pages, I'll integrate and always immediately bin it. This was in a TFAS class. I think it was Wednesday, 7 p.m. class 18, where the whole group went deeper with the mirror exercise. And Jeff was talking about when he writes it out, he does it on the computer. It's like myself. And when it's completed, he goes, delete. So you don't need to keep old mirror exercises. That's finished, that's completed. But also, another thing I do when I write them out, obviously you keep steps 1 and 2 to 1 sentence each, and then you can spend as much time as you like on loving yourself. So supposing I get 3/4 of the way down and I'm feeling pretty much done, I will go to the bottom of the page. I'll sit with it a little bit longer to make sure it's really thoroughly done. I actually saw a meme. It wasn't a twin flame meme, but it said something very similar. Sit with it for a little bit longer than you think you need to. And Shaleia said, go deeper than you think you need to. And the more I mirror, the easier that is. I had a bit of a habit of skimming around the surface a little bit, but my excellent coach, she advised me to just stay present with it and choose to go deeper, right into the core of the upset, and then going deeper actually became really, really easy. You just need to be with yourself. That's it's not difficult. That's all you have to do. And hitting like new layers of numbing and unnumbing those places. And you said how it's such a relief to have found this new place. Yeah, sometimes it can be quite a surprise, like, what, there's more? Okay, let's work through this as well. But so, yeah, that's how it is after a while in the work. But maybe at the beginning of the journey for quite a few people, because we'd been so numbed out at the beginning, when we get triggered, that can be quite painful. It was for me, because after coming into the work, my twin flame immediately showed me a lot of really painful things. And I wasn't yet mastered enough at the mirror exercise to be able to move through it effectively. And I think somebody in the group quite recently asked a question, can you be too upset to do the mirror exercise? And as one of the coaches said, well, that's just a form of resistance to doing the mirror exercise. Certainly I'm guilty of that. Not anymore. As soon as something comes up, juicy thing to mirror and get to work on it. I feel so much better for it.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, it does feel better to work through it. I like what Shaleia said as well in the sermon, like, at first she said, oh, it felt hard to work through the upsets and she didn't want to experience any more. And how then later on she saw it as a gift. And I feel like I'm coming more into that space where whenever something happens that I get upset about, I'm like, okay, I'm going to feel better. I'm just going to choose peace now and move through the upset and then feel better. So yeah, like before I used to just see it as something that was stopping me from getting on through my day, because I was working full time doing a call center job, and then I would like have a bunch of upsets come up through the callers, and then I was like, oh, this is just hindering my day. But like now I just see it as, well, actually I need to do the mirror exercise so that I can move on with my day, because if I don't, it's things don't flow right, things are difficult, I don't receive my guidance for my next step, I don't know how to move forward, and if I don't mirror, it's going to be very ineffective. So I like that what Surya said about, you know, how doing the mirror exercise actually brings gifts, it makes things easier.
Yeah, what you said there, Valentina, kind of like brought up for me this feeling of like you have to get used to doing right by yourself, like living a happy, peaceful life. And if you're like holding on to upsets or not doing the mirror exercise or taking the steps to do that healing, then you're kind of preventing yourself from experiencing that peace, right? And having, I really like what you said about like how you know you're not going to have a good day unless you heal whatever is coming up. And that's so true. Like we have to get used to treating ourselves well enough to heal whatever comes up, because we do deserve to have a good day, right? We don't have to sit in the upset or kind of let our let ourselves experience that. Like we deserve to be at peace, we deserve to feel healed and whole. And so it's like, yeah, don't move forward with your day until you've healed this, because you deserve that healing. So I really like what you shared there. And what you were sharing, Rachel, like it always kind of makes me think about this Grey's Anatomy analogy, the whole concept of like you don't know how numbed out you've been or how upset you really are until you start to crack at it and start to begin the healing. And then all of a sudden, all of these upsets come up and you're like, where did this come from? It makes me think about how on that show, they get a lot of people who have had injuries, right? And if someone kind of comes into the ER, and let's say they've been shot or something like that, a lot of times they'll come in and they don't actually feel any pain because their adrenaline is rushing. They don't really feel the extent of their inner injuries because their adrenaline is rushing. And it's not until they're in like a safe, relaxed space and where they have all the support around them, that's when they kind of start to feel all the pain. It's like they didn't even realize how injured they were until they were in this kind of relaxed space. And I feel like that's kind of what the mirror exercise and map kind of do for us, because when we're numbed out to our upsets, we may not even feel the extent of the pain or the extent of just how numbed out we are until we're in that safe, relaxed, supportive state to where we can just kind of relax and allow the healing to take place. And then that's when we're like, oh my gosh, I've been in so much pain. And it can feel like a bad thing, but it's actually a good thing, because now you're opening yourself up to really healing in this space instead of just allowing your adrenaline to numb you out so you don't feel it. Now you can actually feel it and heal it. So yeah, like I definitely experienced that going through MAP, not knowing just how much in pain I was. And it took me being in that supportive, relaxed space to where I'm like, okay, I've been in a lot of pain, and it's going to take some time and effort to heal through this. And just, making that choice to go all the way in my healing made a big difference.
Yeah, thank God for the teachings, because there's so many things that if we can feel our feelings, just feel horrendously bad. I've been in a few situations before coming into this work. I mean, long before coming into this work, where I got into a place where I could feel my feelings, and initially it felt great, and then it felt horrible. And because I didn't have the tools to move through that bit to the other side, didn't have any option but to go back into numbing. This is what the work does. It's a guiding light through the difficult bit so you can reach the heaven on the other side. Was it Jeff said in the Sedona workshop, you have to walk through the pain to get to a place of love without pain. But this time round, you're walking with God. And it's just you and God, it seems, for a time, and that's okay. And what you were saying a few minutes ago about having to keep on top of the healing, that is so important, because if you don't, you end up with a backlog of spiritual work. And we know what happens when we let it build up, but it's basically separation sets in, or the experience of it. But if you do frequent mirror exercises and keep on top of your healing, you don't have to go through experiences of being painfully triggered, because you don't need them, because you've been feeling your feelings. And if you mirror everything that comes up, the stuff that arises is more minor, shall we say, certainly less painful. Certainly, it's better. It's better to regularly do the mirror exercise. I mean, it reminds me of a Buddhist practice that I used to do before coming into this work, going to the enlightened beings for refuge from suffering. And their teaching said that you don't just go to refuge when you're in trouble. You do it regularly. Then you will be protected from suffering. It's like forgetting God and only praying when you want something. No, you want to be loving God all the time, so you can receive love back from God. But you're not doing it to receive. You're loving because you love. Love is given freely. Love just loves. It doesn't demand anything in return. And love yourself unconditionally as well. I mean, that is the crux of the teaching. And all these painful places, the places that haven't been loved, or that we haven't loved ourselves, or that we've refused to love ourselves. And when you can identify these places and go to these places, sometimes when you put love there, it feels like a first, because it's so long since that place has experienced love, like we've forgotten what it's like. But it's good to reach a new place like that. That's how you know you're going deeper. And even that can feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit almost painful if a place hasn't received love in such a long time and suddenly it's receiving love. It's like tearing the Band-Aid off. But the prescription is always just more love, loving presence and compassion. Sit with yourself a little bit longer, sit with this place. And the bad feeling always dissolves. You come to a place of peace and unconditional love there. The places that are most hurt are the places that need the most God.
Yeah, I can attest to what you said about how it does get easier to move through your upsets. I will say that, like, we can find ourselves going in that spiral. I think the reference is like, you, like, as you go deeper, you may find that you revisit the same upset again and again. But for me, it does get better each time, like, because I was just kind of working through this with my coaches where an upset came up and I'm like, oh, I think we've touched on this before, right? Like, I feel like we've healed through this before, but it's coming up again. But as I kind of reflected on it, I'm like, this time feels different, right? This time it feels not so bad. This time it feels not as impossible, right? Mainly because I've been doing the mirror exercise regularly, like you said, not just using it as a one-stop shop, but having gotten comfortable with it being like a regular practice and really claiming my support. I'm like, something about it this time around, it feels easier to conquer, right? And so I feel like, kind of to your point, that while we'll continue to experience upsets as we purify our consciousness, it does get easier, right? It does get better, especially when you claim your support and you get in the habit of doing this work and doing the healing. So yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying with that. Like, it happens with me where if I'm healing something and I'm like, oh, I've done this mirror exercise a million times before, but then I feel into my consciousness, I'm like, but it feels different this time because I know and I can feel that it's literally another part of my consciousness. So it's not like I'm doing the same mirror exercise over and over again. It's actually a different part of my consciousness that I'm healing. And I recognize that I've had many thousands and thousands upon thousands of lifetimes, and this pattern will have been repeating itself over a long time. So I'm healing this other part of it. So yeah, Jeff actually mentioned that in Twin Flame Ascension School, like, you're healing a different part of your consciousness. You're healing something new every time, even if it's the same upset at the core.
Yeah, yes, I've certainly been doing this a lot lately, going deeper into the layers of an upset and approaching it from many different angles. And each time it has a slightly different flavor, different complexion on it. However, don't be discouraged if you're going through the same upset again and again and again, and it feels the same or pretty damn similar, because it's very easy to believe ego saying, you haven't healed anything. No, that's not true. Maybe this area has many layers that are very similar. But then you get past that, and even if you haven't healed the core of the upset completely, it starts to shift, it starts to change a little bit, starts to feel a little bit different. There'll be lots of branches leading off it, leading into other things, and you're able to literally unravel it right down to nothing. And when you're getting close to doing that, you can see that the root of the upset is actually really simple. You can actually take a step back, look at it, and say, oh, it's just this that was causing all of that. I mean, it seems at the beginning horrendously complicated and tangly. That's why it's a process that takes a little bit of time, because you just literally have to unpick it. And when you break through to a new level, it can feel like you've taken a step back, because it's like a computer game. Once you get to the top of one level, you go up to the next level, but you're at the bottom of the next level. So, yes, I'm getting Mercury retrograde vibes. Yeah, Mercury just got into retrograde, actually. But yeah, and once again, it can be very easy to think, oh no, but where I started, I haven't healed anything. But none of that's true. That's all ego illusion. So you can let that one go and just take the next step that you're shown. That's all you need to do. You don't need to do any more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So for me, the discussion is starting to feel complete. How about you two? Any last insights or takeaways? Awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for joining today's discussion. And for those who joined us live, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are watching from our Facebook page, don't forget to hop over to the Church of Union's YouTube page. That is where you'll find all of our previous discussions and a lot of other juicy content. Thank you again, and we will see you next time. Bye.